Thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to be talking about Ted Bundy and how his childhood trauma could have affected his criminal career and the way that he treated his victims. So let's just go ahead and get started. He was born November 24th, 1946. He was born in the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers. His mom, Louise Cow, was 23 at the time, and she was unwed. Back then, that was a big no-no, and they decided to send her there so she can finish up her pregnancy, give birth, and eventually either take the baby home or give the baby up for adoption. Louise wanted to give the child up for adoption because the father, who was supposed to be a sailor, didn't want anything to do with Bundy. And Bundy is actually illegitimate because no man claimed him as his own. Unfortunately, the grandfather refused to give the child up for adoption. He made her bring Bundy home. Now, the reason why I say unfortunately is because the home that Bundy was coming into was extremely toxic. The grandfather beat his wife, his dog, even threw his daughter down the stairs at one point for waking up late. He also liked deviant sex porn, the type where women are tied up in suggestive situations where they don't know, where they're unable to escape. And this is where I believe he developed a relational understanding of how to treat women. He sees his mother and his grandmother and his aunt all being abused by this man. And this man ruled the house. He was the king of the house. And he also liked deviant sex. So the reason why this is so important is because early childhood development is so important in a child, and that's where they learn relational ways to communicate. They create relationships, they create connections with family members. But every connection within that family was extremely toxic. And how could a toxic environment be nurturing? It's impossible. So already you have a child that is unable to basically have a relationship with anyone, or a healthy relationship with anyone. And at 3 years old, this was his first time of showing any sort of showing that there's something wrong with him. He put all of the kitchen knives around his aunt, pointed facing at her, and she woke up terrified. At 3 years old is such a young age. I don't know many 3-year-olds who would think to collect all of the knives, figure out how many knives they need, and would want to quietly put those around his aunt. There's something very abnormal, very unusual about this act, and it should have been a red flag that this child is emotionally not getting what they need, or emotionally not understanding, what it means to be a kind person. His life changed in 1951 when he was 5, when his mom married John Carpenter Bundy. They moved to Washington together and he ends up having 4 half-siblings. And despite all attempts to bond with Bundy, John Carpenter couldn't crack Bundy. He was cold and distant. The father did everything, as so much as going camping, going on Boy Scouts, but every time he did these things with Bundy refused to participate, would go off on his own, do his own thing, wanted nothing to do with any of this. And later on in life, Bundy said that John Carpenter wasn't bright and didn't make money, so therefore he was worthless to Bundy. I don't know if he felt that way as a child, but the fact that he was unable to connect to somebody so kind to him may be just because of his previous childhood. He has a mother who didn't want him at birth. He has a grandfather who's abusive. And then all of a sudden you have a man who's interested in you. I couldn't imagine how confusing that would be to a 5-year-old child. And I could imagine that would affect how he participated in his daily life. In Washington, where in the neighborhood where they lived, there were the haves and the have-not. They were people who were wealthy, and they kind of run the town, and they were considered the best, while the poorer people in town were considered, pests to society. And oftentimes they were picked on because of being poor. And not only was he teased for being poor, but he was also teased for having a severe stuttering problem. He was completely embarrassed of this, and he had trouble making friends also because of his stuttering. At 15, we see a significant change within him. He starts having symptoms of paraphilic disorders, where he is a voyeuristic type, where he enjoys watching girls undress in windows when they're not looking. These types of people enjoy humiliation, the type of humiliation of a woman finding out that she was being watched while getting undressed. These people want power because they're shy. He was also fantasizing about rape, stealing nude magazines and dime novels, the same type that his grandfather did enjoy. And this was also the time when he found his birth certificate and found out that he was indeed illegitimate. At that same time, the neighborhood girl, Anne Marie, goes missing. Now, Anne Marie isn't just any girl. She's on Bundy's paper route, and she is also a piano student for Bundy's uncle. So she was around, and she knew Bundy. Many people believe this to be his first kill. And many people think that that's because of the rage he felt once he found out that he was indeed illegitimate. We forward on to, okay, so he was dating a pretty smart, well-off young girl. She had long dark hair parted in the middle, and they dated for a while, and he really fell for her. She rejects him, saying that he's not going anywhere when he decides to drop out of school for a little bit, and that completely crushed him. Ted Bundy was a narcissist, and to grow up being told that you're not good enough, only to find a girl that you get along with and she tells you you're not good enough, this could lead to a psychotic break if that's indeed what he is. They date on and off until eventually she asks to get back with him, and I believe that he wanted the chase more than the reward. After being rejected, his narcissism came through, and he splitted that idea of, well, if I'm not good enough for you, then you're not good enough for me. But it really affected his psyche, and 3 weeks later, after they broke up, the killings began. All of the victims were long-haired, long dark hair, parted in the middle. They were beautiful, between 18 and 25. One of the firsts was in January 4th of 74. Joni disappears. She was bludgeoned to death and found with a bed rod up her vagina. January 31st of 74, Linda Ann Haley was abducted 1 mile away from Joni's home. And that leads us to Lake Sammamish Park of July of 74. They were having a Rainier Beer annual picnic. This was huge for the community. They did festival foods, festival games. There was fishing, boating, swimming. It was just the place to be, and every person went. Now, Janice, 23, and Denise, 19, go missing during this picnic. And one of the girls was seen leaving with a man that identified himself as Ted with a brown VW Bug. And he had told many of the people, of the girls he talked to that day, that his name was indeed Ted, and that he was just around looking for girls, I assume to kill, maybe to flirt with, but he definitely was looking for something. He was looking for someone to abduct, because he did keep his hand in a sling, and that was one of his MOs, was to pretend to be injured so he can get the victim's guard down and take advantage of someone doing something kind for a handicapped person. Funny enough, Elizabeth, the girlfriend of Ted Bundy at the time, saw the sketch of him that these beachgoers did, and she identified him and called police and said that she's dating a guy that looks just like that. His name is Ted, and he drives the same car that you're looking for. But unfortunately, police at that time had over 1,000 VW bugs to comb over in the Washington area, and because of that, it was sort of lost among police. In September of 1974, the dump site of Janice and Denise were finally found. So were other body parts of other victims that they could not identify. And they found out that he would visit the bodies and put makeup on them. This was a dump site that he went to often, that he went to go reenact the things that had happened, to have a relationship with these girls. He took the head off of at least one girl, and the head is such a personal item on a body. It is the easiest way to identify. It has the eyes and the mouth, and to take that from a body is extremely personal and is extremely rage-filled. And he was getting something out of visiting these bodies, of keeping his dump site to himself. Everyone gets in a relationship because there's give and take, but unfortunately, he thought he was getting something from these bodies. They were filling a need and a desire that he had. It's really disgusting to think of somebody wanting to have sex with a dead body, but there is a disorder called the fetishistic disorder. It's also part of the paraphilic disorders. And what it is, it's the sexual urges of inanimate objects. They are able to bypass the decomposition because they want to relive the moment, and that satisfaction of having that relationship again is what gets him off. So this leads us to November 8th of 1974. At least 19 women have disappeared in 5 states, but yet this whole time he was able to maintain a normal life. He was in his diary while he was on death row. He talked a lot about how he would just wake up with the urge to have that control over a woman, to want to smother someone to death, and that he was able to, by day, be who he needed to be, and by night, go wild. This all correlates to a sexual sadist. Again, this is a paraphilic disorder. And what it is it's somebody who inflicts physical and psychological pain on others. One story of his that a woman told was she went on a date with him, and they went into the beach, and they went into the water, and he would dunk her head in for prolonged periods of time to see how long she could stand underwater. He enjoyed the torture. He enjoyed seeing the pain. He enjoyed the loss of control that he could force upon women. And it's just very disturbing. Sexual sadists, they develop this from early childhood. Again, I'll go back to the creepy grandpa who liked deviant sex porn. This could all stem from that and how he saw women getting treated and how he thought women should get treated. The victim's suffering is key to a sadist's arousal. Again, he enjoyed every minute of it. He enjoyed it so much that he would go back to dump sites to relive those moments with decaying corpses. This was special to him. This was relational to him. This meant something to him. All of those girls meant something different to him, and he got something from them, more than just their lives. He got, I don't even know the words. He got, So with the sexual sadism, it gets worse over time. So you can start seeing this in early childhood, but without treatment, it becomes very toxic and very volatile, obviously, because we're talking about a man killing dozens of women for that specific satisfaction. And their goal is to achieve control, and they have an underlying feeling of sexual inadequacy. Again, this goes back to his whole childhood where he wasn't good enough to be a part of the cool kids. He was made fun of because of his stuttering problem and because his family was poor. And it also comes from his ex-girlfriend dumping him and how that affects how he looks. He had a demeanor of him having everything together, that he's confident and strong, but in reality he was completely insecure about who he was as a person, and he wanted to make up for that in his own way, and in his own way was to murder, unfortunately. And that does it with Ted Bundy. Let me know what you think. If you think these have anything to do with how he turned out, or if you think that he just turned out the way he did because that's just who he was. I would like to know your opinions, so please share below, and I hope to talk to you soon. Have a great night.